Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Spiritism Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to host this talk today by Jussara Korngold, who will be talking about Parable of Talents. Let's all give Jussara a very warm welcome. And before she starts her presentation, allow me to introduce her. Jussara Korngold is currently the General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council and the former President and current Vice President of the United States Spiritist Federation. She is the founder and president of the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. Ms. Korngold is fluent in Portuguese, English, French, and Spanish. She is an international speaker, a published author, and a translator. Ms. Korngold works for Brazil Child Health Dara Institute as its main executive. Hi, Sasada, how are you?
Hello, Peter.
So please take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. Shasada has reserved time to address your questions and comments once she concludes her presentation. Shasada, it's all yours.
So, good morning, everyone. We are very happy to be here with you uh, for this work with United States Spiritist Federation, a work that we have started some years ago and that we continue doing, having each and every week so many people that come here and give their talk and share their knowledge and enlighten our lives. And this is what I'm trying to achieve here today with this topic that we are going to be talking to you, that we have selected for today, that we call, like, gifts of life. What we There are so many gifts, there's so many things that we have received from life when we receive before reincarnation. And usually we take for granted all the blessings that we have. And in order to do that, we are going to be using the as basis for our reflections today, the parable of the talents. Of course, this is a very well-known parable, but we will try to bring different angles so that we can reflect even more about all these gifts of life that we were talking about and how important it is for us to go into that. So when we are talking about parables, parables are known as being an allegorical narrative conveying an indirect message through comparison or analogy. And sometimes, when we talk about parables as well, most people are going to refer to them as being a parable that has some kind of a religious or moral precept. I don't know if you know, but even Benjamin Franklin, he wrote some parables as well, not necessarily religious, but with moral precept. And the ones that we are more familiar with, of course, are the parables that Jesus would bring to us and that we know as their narrative can be found in the Gospels. Parables normally are divided into three classes. What kind of parable are we talking about? So the first one, it could be said as being the true parables, parables that exemplify our daily life. So the illustration is drawn from daily life, so their teaching can be universally recognized. So there is one of the parables that Jesus presents, the sheep separated from the flock, that at the time of Jesus was very common. So people would relate, even if they were not directly doing that, they would relate, they would know, because that were part of their lives, of what they were living. So they were considered to be real facts. But behind the real facts, behind things that we were drawn, like Jesus were drawn from daily life, there could be a teaching, that could be a moral precept. parables that were presented as stories, so referring to past events, more specifically centered on a person. So here we have the parable of the unfaithful steward, the one that have received some duties to fulfill and he has not fulfilled. So and Jesus come and presents as a story, not necessarily based on real facts, but facts that were probable and things also that could relate directly to the lives of people. And some illustrations that we say. So stories that when we wanted to explain better a concept, we will use this kind of illustration. So when the Pharisee comes to Jesus asking how could he guarantee to enter into the kingdom of God, and after providing a question that would lead the Pharisee himself to provide the answer, which would be, to follow the examples, the teachings of Jesus, of God, to love God above all things and to others as oneself. He gives an example, the parable of the Good Samaritan. So, as in a way to illustrate the point that he wanted to get into. So this is how a parable works and how we are going to be also utilizing the parable of the talents today. So in order for us to get the moral precepts, to be able to apply them in our day-to-day lives and see how much it has really actually to do with us, especially in the case of all those who are looking for, more spiritual way of going on with their lives. One of the things that was commonly asked was, why did Jesus would speak in parables? And one of the things that we have is accessibility, because they were this form of communication that common people could understand, using, like we said, examples and words of these everyday situations. Another one is in terms of memorability, it's much easy for us to remember the stories, the parables, and to transmit orally to others so that the message could go across, because one would be saying, oh, I just heard this parable from Jesus, or this story from Jesus. And they would be replicating it very easily. There is always a challenge as well, because sometimes, when we think we got into the first layer of the parable, we understand what it is in the first layer of the parable. There are so many other layers. There are so many different teachings that we can gather from them if we just move the angle a little bit. And this is what we are doing 2,000 years later. We are still studying the parables and becoming fascinated in complete awe with the different angles that it presents to us before the 21st century. But of course, there was this fact of discretion as well. And sometimes, Jesus really wanted to share his knowledge with us, but communicate this message in a more discreet way, especially when it was related to, the opposition or persecution of religious authorities at that time. So he would bring a common situation, but in fact, he was referring to something else, and some of their, the disciples and other followers could understand, but not necessarily would be an aggression to what, to other people at that time. But of course, when he was talking about charity, he would speak openly. And to the apostles, he would speak openly about everything, because those were teaching that really had to pass on and to continue living forever. Let's talk about a little bit about the monetary values, because I don't know about yourselves, but every time I heard the story or the parable about the parable of the talents, I mean, I don't know why it to me always came the idea that you were receiving like maybe one tiny coin, and so now we know exactly, I mean, what a talent is. The most common coin that we had, a way of transactions at that time, was the denarius. The denarius was basically a value of a day work. And so people would expect to receive about 300 denarius a year, the drachma being the same thing. But when we talk about a talent, the talent we are talking about, um, depending on the the metal that we are talking about, if it's silver, if it's gold, if it's lead, if it's iron, it will be a different weight. So one talent will be a certain amount that will represent at least something about 70 pounds in 70 pounds of a metal. So we are really talking about a bag or bags of money, of denarius, that would represent this amount of money. So we are not talking about a small quantity of money. We are talking about a very reasonable quantity of money, of value, of monetary value here when we are talking about the talent. So here comes the parable of the talents. We know that the master went on a long journey, and he called his servants and entrusted his possessions to them. Entrusted being here the key word. He was not giving to them. He was entrusting them to take good care of that, what he was bestowing to them as being necessary for them while they were not in the company of the master. So to one, he gave 5 bags of gold. In this case, the 5 bags of gold representing this about 70 pounds of gold. To another one, 2 bags to 70 pounds each, right? And another one bag, each according to their own ability. So it's so interesting when we think about that, because he was not just giving them and choosing an amount randomly. It was really very well thought in terms of how much do I think this servant can really hold and can be entrusted in the case of taking care of this value, this opportunity, right? The bags of gold in this case. So the man that received the 5 bags, as the parable goes on, put all this money to work, and at the end, he managed to get another 5 bags. So the same happened with the one that had 2 bags and gained 2 more. But the one that received 1 bag, he went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. What was his thought at that moment? That he would not risk getting in the bedside of his master, perhaps, or there was a huge amount of money, because it was, like we said, 1 bag, 1 talent was a huge amount of money already, and he didn't want to take any responsibility in losing it, or not being able to give it back to the master after all. So after a long time, the master returned. He calls the servants to settle accounts with them. And of course, the first one comes and says, well, he gave me 5 bags, I gained 5 more. And the master replied, well done, good, faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, so I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The same happened with the one of 2 bags of gold. He said, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. But here comes the one that received just one bag, 1 talent. So he said, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here it is, it belongs to you. So he thought for a moment that he would be pleasing the Lord. He didn't quite get the idea of what was the intention upon receiving this value, what the Lord was trying to do to him. So the response from the Lord is, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. So let us understand a little bit the reasoning behind all of that. First of all, the giving of responsibility, the entrusting each one with the talents, and it's very interesting because of course that was not what the meaning of the word at the time that Jesus presented the parable, right? I mean, it really represented an amount of money, but today when we talk about talent, we are really talking about gifts of life. We are really talking about possibilities that we have, and then sometimes are very particular to us. Sometimes some people are very musical, others are very artistic, others are much more related to science or to spirituality or to acts of charity. So we and cookery and that's why we have so many different professions, right? Because we will try to apply the talents that we have. So in this case, this is how Jesus presents a parable that travels beyond all the ages, and it still has so much meaning to us. Like, if I'm entrusting something to you, it's like, I'm also giving you a possibility, to push you further, to get from something to acquire more values for yourself. So in this sense, when the one that had received 1 talent was not capable of doing that, and then the Lord gives to the one that has received more, we have to remember at the beginning that it was saying it's going to be given to each one of them according to their abilities of working. So the one that received 1, he had the ability of multiplying that as well. It was just that he was afraid. He was lacking responsibility. And in this case, when this talent, or let's say this amount, is transferred to the one that we have received more, clearly, because this is the one that has shown that has enough responsibility to deal even with more possibilities than before. So Now, what he says here, the servant, the Lord, is that you have to go into the darkness. I mean, I provided you with something that could bring light to your life, could bring you through these qualities more possibility of success, spiritually speaking, but you have not. So now you have to learn, you have to go back and learn even without this kind of possibilities. So when we think about that, we have to remember that we are all children of God and that we all receive gifts. It's not that some is going to receive more than others. Even when we are talking here, oh, but one received 5, the other 2, the other 1, according to their ability. The ability is conquests that we ourselves are going to be achieving throughout our incarnations. So it's based on marriage. So to some, we will see that in terms of the abilities that we will receive, maybe in different forms, maybe in forms of money, maybe in forms of wisdom, maybe in forms of spiritual gifts, but for each and every one of us, there will always be possibilities for us to exercise and to learn and to gather new virtues. But Emmanuel, it's very interesting because in the book Living Spring, psychographed by Chico Xavier, lesson 132, Emmanuel talks about fear being the great adversary of talent. So he makes a reference exactly in relation to this parable, saying that many times it is because of fear that we are going to fail. So it is true that the third servant received less opportunities for gain. But in any case, it was the fear that paralyzed him. It was the situation that he found himself that paralyzed him. And so he says, as with the negligent servant in the gospel narrative, there are many people who accuse themselves of being poor in resource to navigate the world as they would like. And they withdraw into idleness, citing fear of action. So many people says, oh, I do not help. I do not do anything because I do not have the resources, whatever the resources they are referring to are. But we know that this is not true. We all have something. We all have possibilities. Maybe not the same as other people that we know, but other people that we know also, when they started doing something, perhaps they were not also displaying the same ability that they are displaying now, that came with, hands to work and really putting into practice everything that they could do. So here, the words was of the servant was, I was afraid and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. So sometimes we will find, like Emmanuel lists here, fear of working and serving. I don't want to take the responsibility. I'm comfortable in my position. Fear of making friends. And this may seem strange, but you have to invest yourself to make friends and keep your friends, right? Fear of disappointing. Oh, if I do, I'm not going to do as good as others. Better if I don't even start it and don't give any reason for criticism. Fear of suffering and pain. Fear of being misunderstood, and even fear of joy sometimes. Because after all, there is fear behind. There is lack of commitment, lack of responsibility, and I prefer to just remain in my comfortable zone. So, and Emmanuel says something that is so interesting, because he says, in life they cling to the fear of death. In death, they confess the fear of life. So those are the typical people that, and when I say people, all of us, that will say, oh my God, I have fear of death. And then now I'm fear of living, of coming back and have to face a new incarnation. So he says, under the pretext of being less favored by fate, they gradually transform themselves into champions of futility and laziness. No matter how dark the path you're being led to by circumstances, enrich it with the light of your efforts in goodness, because fear did not serve as an acceptable justification in the settling of accounts between the servant of the Lord. So here, Emmanuel is taking this lesson and telling us, listen, if you think using the excuse of being fearful that it would not be enough, this is not accepted and excused. You have to do the best with the possibilities that you have, even if it's not that many great possibilities. Many companions become accustomed to lamenting over talents they do not yet possess, forgetting the blessings that already grace their lives. It's something that we see in human beings, in ourselves, right? We are always aiming for things that we do not have. If you have something, you may be happy with that, but now you want something else. And then we want something else. And then we want something else. And we stop valuing everything that we have and that we have conquered throughout the years. And so he's telling us here, reflect on the opportunities available to you, and you will grasp the scope of the advancements bestowed upon you by divine providence. An advancement represents an early concession with specific objectives in mind. When we think about the parables of the talents, right? The talents did not belong to them, right? It was entrusted to them. So it was an advancement bestowed upon them by the divine providence, meaning being a conception that would promote each one of them to gather resources by themselves. So it's very much like when our planning before reincarnation, we come and study, the virtues that we have to conquer, the imperfections that we have to eliminate, and we study, we'll make a strategy to what will be the best tools for us to reach this goal. But upon receiving those tools, it doesn't mean that they belong to us yet. It's something that we have to conquer, right? And this is what we have to think about. So many things that we have, so many talents that we have, that is just a concession. They are not ours yet, but they were given to us momentarily just for us to make the most of it and conquer them by ourselves. So in this sense, there is in the book Among Brothers from Other Lands, a psychography of Chico Xavier, the brother X, Humberto de Campos, brings an interpretation that it was given by this rabbi that has been following the works of Spiritism, and this Rabbi Zohar Ben Ozias. It's a very distinguished Israeli guide, now devoted to the truths of the gospel in the spiritual world. And this book was psychographed in London, this passage at per se in 1965. So he brings an interpretation that it's, I think it's very interesting, and it relates so much with what we have and our present situation in the world. So it's of course, since it's an interpretation, it comes from the same point. There is the Lord of the earth that is going to depart temporarily from the world, and he called the three servants, and considering each one's ability, the same thing, they will entrust them with possessions as a loan. and inform them that he would meet them again later in the higher life. So this is a very clear representation of us before reincarnation, right? Now you are going to be called to the world, but later on, now we'll meet you in the higher life. And here are some possibilities some tools that I'm going to provide to each one of you, tools, talents, so that you can thrive and that you can, more easily conquer and achieve um, uh, virtues for yourselves. So he calls the first one. The first one, he gives money, power, comfort, skill, and prestige. And of course, when we read that according to our many times much more materialistic point of view in terms of life, we will say, oh, this one was really favored, with all these possibilities, of working and moving around, move about in the world. So this is the first situation. So it comes a time for this first one to return to the higher realm. And how is his position? How is, according to this, the way that the rabbi tells us here? He says, Lord, I have made many mistakes, but I have begun to cultivate, albeit with small results, another 5: work, progress, friendship, hope, and gratitude. Forgive me, oh divine friend, if I could not do more. So it's the moment when, upon returning, although he's still capable of presenting 5 other, qualities that he calls small results, he knows, he feels that he could have done more. But in any case, the Lord is very happy with him. He says, well done, faithful servants, for you did not err intentionally. Return to the earthly field and resume the interrupted work, being reborn under the care of the affections you have gathered. So here is the situation that we understand as us being immortal spirits. We will always have the opportunity of coming back, of returning. But the return, of course, like we said, since everything is based on merit, on personal merit, is not being receiving more privilege because we are all equal before God. We are all children of God and we all receive the same opportunities. In this case, it shows clearly that when this servant is going to be returning, he's going to start already, continuing the work from where he stopped it. So he had merit that he had conquered for himself, and so it's going to be easier for him to start, to continue his building up of himself, with everything that he has gathered already. So comes the second one, and to the second one, the Lord gives intelligence and authority. So intelligence and authority, two other valuable resources that we can have in order to serve humankind, to do good. But in the same case, this one also returns to the Lord asking forgiveness for his shortcomings, also because of his mistakes. But he said, in spite of them, I acquire to others culture and experience, and for the benefit of many of our brothers who remain behind. And in the same way, the Lord said, you did not err intentionally. Return to the earthly field and resume the interrupted work, being reborn under the care of the affections you have gathered. So again, the same situation. And it's so amazing because we see that when we have already a certain understanding, right? Like in the case of these two workers, two servants, they got the ability and they did something about it. But still, they knew they could do something more. They could have done more. But in any case, they are going to be giving opportunities to go back and continuing in this path, in this journey that they have initiated, that not only benefit themselves, but they benefit others. So here comes the third one. What does he give to the third one? He gives Spiritist knowledge. So he gives to the third one is the Spiritist knowledge. And let's see how this develops. In the same way, like the parable, comes the third one and says, Lord, I return to you the Spiritist knowledge, untouched and pure, as I receive it from your munificence. Spiritist knowledge is light, Lord, and through it, I have learned that your law is too harsh, attributing to each according to their deeds. How to use such a bright and living lamp if men on earth are divided by nightmares of envy and jealousy, cruelty and illusion? How to employ the brilliance of your truth without hurting or disturbing? And how to disturb or hurt without bringing deplorable consequences upon myself. You know that truth among human beings creates problems wherever it appears. Therefore, I was afraid of your law and judged that the most reasonable measure for me was to settle into the peace of my home. Thinking thus, I concealed the gift that you recommended I apply, and I return to you such wealth without the slightest touch from me. So here comes our part. Here comes where we have to really think about, to meditate and be true to ourselves. Because this is knowledge, this wealth, like it says here, this precious gift of Spiritist knowledge has been bestowed upon all of us. And what are we doing with that? Are we, presenting excuses as well because we fear the responsibility? We fear the changes that it has to motivate in our lives. Because once we know or we have this Spiritist knowledge, once we understand about our purpose here on earth, there is no coming back. There is no possibility of saying, I did not know. We may say, I was not capable of doing that. I was not capable of following that, but I knew. I just didn't have the will to do it. I was fearful that even if I tried, I would not be able to succeed anyway. And then this is what happens here. But let's see how it continues in this parable presented to us. The sublime creditor, however stern and sad, ordered that the treasure of Spiritist knowledge be taken from him and delivered immediately to the two diligent collaborators who would return to earth, declaring emphatically, unfaithful servant, there is no alternative for you, for your negligence, other than to begin your entire work again from the darkest obstacle of the beginning. But then he comes and says, Lord, Lord, where is your fairness? You gave my companions money, power, comfort, skill, prestige, intelligence, and authority. And to me, you granted only Spiritist knowledge. How do you place the full weight of your severity upon me? So at this point, he had not yet completely understood that to which he was given according to their possibilities. And to him, somehow, even he was the one that perhaps didn't present as much. It was given the most precious one because it was the start, the beginning for him to be able to deal with others with responsibility. Because this is what we see in the world. This is what happens when we see people that get so much money, so much prestige or intelligence, but they do not have the Spiritist knowledge. They do not have the spiritual vision. They do not see us all as being brothers and sisters. Then all this intelligence and money and prestige and all of that is going to be used for vain purpose, for their, to satisfy, to please their own pride and selfishness. So this is why we have to start receiving this light and this understanding. So the Lord says, you do not, and so it says, you do not ignore that I attribute to you the light of truth as being the greatest good of all, and the one that is going to give us the basis for everything else. Right? So, by hiding the wealth I lent you, you not only lost yourself out of fear of suffering and helping, but also harmed the deficient work of your brothers, whose days in the world would have achieved greater yield in eternal good had they received the share of love and service, humility and patience that you denied them. So here is when we refer to the question 642 of the Spirit's book, where Kardec asks the spirits, if it is enough for people not to do evil in the world to please God and secure their future position. And the spirits replying, saying, no, one must do good within the limits of your powers, because we will be held accountable for any evil that result from us not having done good, which is exactly what the Lord is telling him now. Not only you have lost a precious opportunity for yourself, but you didn't share this light. You didn't share this knowledge that would have been the solution, or at least the beginning, for so many people, for them not to be dismayed, for them to understand their purpose in life, for them to understand that they are loved, for them to understand that there is always protection and love and guidance and mercy that we receive from God. And this is the most, where he failed, because he had to share. He became the fig tree, like we have the parable of the fig tree that was not providing fig, that was not providing nourishment to others, so it had to dry. So now what is going to happen? He has to return without those possibilities, and probably without having someone that very much like himself had to share the knowledge, had to come and bring hope and optimism so that they could as also thrive and get into a better situation. But of course, the servant is not pleased at all. He didn't get any kind of advantage for himself in terms of learning from this precious teaching that it was the Spiritist knowledge. So he comes and said, Lord, Lord, why? Why such rigor if your law is of mercy and justice? So he uses the goodwill, he uses mercy and justice. He has not yet understood what he was supposed to have done. And so at this moment, the Lord goes away, and the assistance of the Lord comes and guides the unfaithful servant into the shadows of a fresh start. So he's going to be prepared for a new reincarnation, clarifying to him that, yes, the law is indeed the embodiment of mercy and justice, but with a distinction. For those unaware of their duties, justice comes through the warrant of mercy. But for those that are aware of their own responsibility, mercy comes through the confines of justice. And now this is what he needed. He needed to return. He needed to start and, facing even more difficult situations, because at this time, not as punishment, but because if it was given to him again, with this line of reasoning that he was still having, like, where is your mercy and justice? Why such rigor? He had not learned the lesson. He would have continue being idle in relation to this precious wealth. So at the present moment, he had to start from one point where he would start understanding that if he had certain possibilities, he could be making his life so much easier. And so, but just I finished the presentation, but I'm just going to conclude my thoughts. And it's so incredible when we read all that, when we think about this. This parable, the way that Jesus presented, the way that Humberto de Campos brings to us in this book, Among Brothers of Other Lands, from other lands, and how we ourselves are situated in our current incarnation. Like we were saying, we have so much, we have received so much, especially us that are here, and it means that we already have something, that we will have to have this understanding of the preciousness that the spirit knowledge represent. But not only that, all the other talents that we have. Let's stop comparing ourselves to others. Let's stop thinking that, just because I don't have something else that a friend or somebody else has, it means that what I have is not important, and that is not going to contribute for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of human lives. We all have something to give. We're all provided with the gifts of life that are actually directed exactly for us to be using them in the best possible way. It may be so many different things, but there is only one way that we are going to find out whether we have them or not, is if we apply ourselves and start doing something about it. So the invitation, the main purpose of this talk was for us, really to reflect, to start thinking how precious each one of us are, because we have so much. We have so many abilities that we take for granted. Like, for instance, the voice, the ability to talk, the ability to reason, the ability to be discussing these topics with all of you, the ability of listening and meditating upon all of them, and thinking with gratitude how much we have really to thank our Heavenly Creator for all the things that we do. We are all full with benefits and gifts. So it's just up to us now to put them in practice and start doing what we were supposed to do here. So the lesson is for us to take advantage of all of that. Do not let fear, do not let, comments or, criticism of others or even ourselves come and becomes an obstacle for us to accomplish what we are supposed to accomplish. So, okay, we are ready for the questions.
Thank you, Jussara, for the reflections you provided. Please stay with us for the Q&A session after some announcements. On September 21st, the 18th U.S. Spiritist Symposium took place in Boston, Massachusetts, featuring enriching lectures, panel discussions, and a dynamic Q&A session. We invite everyone to watch the full event on the USSF YouTube channel. Don't miss out on this opportunity to deepen your understanding about Spiritism. Number 2, Introduction to Mediumship, a free virtual course for beginners. The U.S. Spiritist Federation is thrilled to invite individuals eager to explore the realm of spirit communication according to Spiritism. Check out the new course at learn.spiritist.us or scan the QR code on the flyer. Number 3, podcast-like series, Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, based on the works by Joanna DeAngelis. A new episode every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, available on YouTube and Spotify. Next, Spiritist app Be My Hope is available now on the App Store or Google Play. This app offers uplifting content in a collection of videos, daily messages, and audio materials. Download it now. And finally, on the screen, please note there is a QR code. If you want to help the USSF produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, scan the QR code on screen for your donation. Next, we will address some comments and questions from the audience, and there's still time for you to send in yours. Okay, let's see what we have. From the U.S. Spiritist Federation. Can we describe the servant who hid his talents as being presumptuous about the master's intentions?
Of course, we can get many interpretations about this servant, and the first one being that, of course, it was an imperfect being, and so, of course, by not understanding quite well the intentions, that was a benefit for him, just thinking that I have to please the Lord, and the best way that I know to do that is not going to compromise me and not give me any kind of work, is just not to think about it, just put it in a safe place, and then I just return to you. So I think really there was a complete misunderstanding of what the purpose was. Maybe if he had risen a little bit more, or he could have even, if we wanted to elaborate things that comes from the parable, he could have been talk to the other two and say, hey guys, what you got so much more than I did, what are you guys going to do with all this this money, with all these resources? Help me, because I cannot make a decision. Even after he hid that, there was time. It was not that it was immediately. There is a time frame in this whole situation. But yeah, it's in a story to illustrate, right? And to show that, unfortunately, many times this is what happens. We don't seek advice. We misunderstand the intention, and we misunderstand the value. right? So that's what I think it happened here, and this is the lesson for all of us to understand this.
Good point. Sometimes it's very hard for people to fully understand what the task really is.
Hmm.
Okay, question from Daniel Santos. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Zasada. Great talk. How can we apply this particular teaching toward our family members on a daily basis?
Oh, this is wonderful, Daniel, because I think that one of the best gifts that we can give in terms of family life, in terms of being parents, is education. And here, of course, we besides the formal education that we are talking about, we are talking the education in terms of the moral, in the moral sense, in the spiritual sense of our family members. But the thing is, it's very hard for us to remember that we can only provide them education. We cannot, from that point on, say what they are going to be doing with all of that. And I think this is one of the best talents we have. Give this education, give true examples, right? As in terms of how we act, how we respond to things in life, and to our children, to our family members, because they are the closest one. They are the ones that are first are going to they are going firsthand to benefit from our good actions, and be hurt by our bad actions. So if we can give them education, if we can provide them with the resources, the moral spiritual resources, this is us distributing talents, and then this is more circle, but the most important one, the ones that were directly given to us, so that we could contribute with little by little changing the world.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. In thinking about the bestowing of talents, can one draw a line between personal responsibility and prudence versus the taking of risk?
Well, since we will be trying to find excuses in everything, I don't think as human beings we are at a point that we will be too much worried about being prudent, right? What is more difficult for us is really to take personal responsibility. So we may hide as well behind being a prudent person. Oh no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to risk that because I will transform something that can be negative, like fear. I fear doing that just because I'm prudent. And so I think we can say whatever we want to say, but we know, God knows. And yeah, there will be situations where perhaps the risk is too much, is too great. But then again, when we think about it just came to my mind now, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, what were the risks of she as a nun, not being the religious official of the country she was in, visiting all those places, and being criticized as well, thinking that she wanted to help, to transform, to make followers. But she didn't fear. She just knew that she had a responsibility to fulfill it. She just went with that. And I mean, and that was never a cause for her to not feel that she was not protected by God, and not having faith that she was doing her duty. So yeah, I think you always have to be very careful, but we have to see, to be very true, to understand where comes the cut, right?
Yeah, these are good points.
Mhm.
Okay, next question from the United States Spiritist Federation. How much is fear a blessing or a curse in our lives?
Well, having studying a lot of psychology lately,
Mm,
we hear that fear is one of the worst enemies that we can have. So, being prudent, however, is one thing. So we are not talking about, becoming a crazy person just because, no, but fear paralyzes us. Uh, and apparently, fear is not good in any kind of situation. Um, uh, with the sense that it paralyzes us sometimes even to respond to the fight and flight situation, or I mean, because the fear is going to be the freeze, is when I freeze, and so I'm not even going to defend myself. So I think, from this perspective now, I'm trying to see fear more as a curse, more as something that I have to eliminate. Again, not putting aside the sense of being prudent and even responsibility, and understanding that I have responsibility towards myself, towards my body as well. So I'm not going to put my body at risk, myself at risk. And so this is how I perceive that. Okay, I just are perceives that now.
certainly, the fear of not looking at ourselves can be a huge burden in the long run.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Trying to spread knowledge, how can we, trying to spread knowledge, how can we find the difference between wasteful preaching and true enlightenment?
And this is always a question, I think, because if we keep our mouths shut, how can others learn about anything, right? Having said that, we know that the famous phrase by Francis of Assisi, preach the gospel when you use words if necessary, emphasizing that above all, it's necessary for us to practice. So here, I think the middle ground is doing what you preach. So your words are not going to be empty words. So if you are just preaching and saying and using words, but at the end of the day, people will not be seeing any kind of results in you. And here we are not talking about people perceiving you as being uh, perfect, because, well, there is not even a possibility, right? But thinking that, or at least you think that about yourself. This is something different. So I think it's very important for us. This is how I perceive when people comes and start telling me things that we could say in terms of things for me to learn in terms of spiritual things. I feel the energy that comes or do not come from them. So I can perceive, in the light that comes from their eyes, and how the skin shines, and the smile they provide, and the tone of voice they are talking to us. Because sometimes, when it's too teaching, like, you have to do that, or this kind of things, it doesn't impact me that much. But sometimes, the way they say that people say. And so this is what I've been learning for myself. But one thing I know, it's if we don't multiply, if we don't say it, if we don't give opportunities to others, how can they learn? It's the same thing that we learn from this parable, right? I mean, you have the spiritist knowledge, somehow you have to put it out. And put it out doesn't mean necessarily just go and saying empty words, but doing things, involving things, in doing good things, acts of charity, so many other things that people can do that is not even related to, or does not necessarily need to be related to any religious affiliation as well.
Mhm. Okay, good points. All right, this will be the last question from the International Spiritist Council. Can you elaborate on the meaning of the expression, to those who have more, more will be given?
Yeah, we have this saying that if you want a task to be performed, you should look for the people that is the busiest and ask this person, right? Or ask this person to do it, because somehow they will find the time, they will find the will to help you. So I think it's more or less in the sense as well, that people that have already proved themselves capable of doing some things, they are ready for more. We are all ready for more, but of course, there are some that are already, this is already their rhythm. They start already doing those things, and so they will be capable of receiving more, even in terms of the understanding, because it's interesting, because there are still sometimes I still hear that, oh my God, we had so many workers in the Spiritist Center, and now the workers have gone, and my responsibility has increased it so much, and I have to do this and that. And sometimes somehow I feel like saying, you should be jumping and be happy, because you have been giving more work, which means that you are capable of doing that. I just sometimes don't say it, because it seems that I'm happy with the people that went away. I'm not. And I don't want them to go away. But on the other hand, heavens is providing you with more chance, with more opportunities. So grab that and don't complain. Just do it happily, because this is, if it was given to you, it was because you had the possibility. And this is one thing that we have to think about. These two servants, right? The one that have received the talents, the one that received the Spiritist knowledge, they have the ability, they have the possibility. They didn't fulfill it, but they had the possibility. It was not just given to them, and they were completely unprepared to fulfill their tasks. No, they had the possibility of fulfilling the task. They just didn't. They chose to be paralyzed. They chose not to meddle in things that could be more complicated. Like the other one said, the truth is never accepted. People do not like to hear the truth. Okay. We know that the task is not easy, but it's our duty to do it, and more than do it, to live it in our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jussara, and thank you, everyone who has been participating in these weekly talks. Next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, don't miss our next live, when Marcio Silva will be discussing Love Your Enemies. Jussara, before we close this live, can you please say a prayer for us?
Absolutely. So once again, very thankful for being here, and with all of you, and having this opportunity of sharing a little bit of my gifts, right, with you. So thank you very much, the United States Spiritist Federation, of which I'm very proud to be part of. And thank you, Peter, for conducting the study so well. And above all, at this moment, we thank our Heavenly Creator for everything that we have received, for all those opportunities for us to be able to be here and to do this work, to do the share that was entrusted to us as a loan, knowing that this kind of concessions would be just the beginning of us shining and being able to find more about ourselves, about spirituality, about our purpose in life. And having known for so long about all of these teachings and understanding about ourselves, we ask that we have more assistance and guidance from the spirit benefactors, so that we can courageously continue in this journey, even if things seems to be difficult for us, that we continue doing this work and continue spreading the light and love of our brother Jesus. So be it.